We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Damon Prescott checked his watch as he waited outside Riverdale Elementary's special needs classroom. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and children's art projects. His daughter, Izzy, would be finishing her physical therapy session any minute now. At 38, Damon had built Prescott Construction from the ground up into one of Portland's most successful mid-sized firms. His weathered hands and the creases around his eyes told the story of someone who'd worked hard for everything he had. His phone buzzed with a text from his fiancée, Vanessa Keller. Don't forget, final venue walkthrough at 7. Caterer needs, final head count. Damon smiled, typing back confirmation. In just 3 days, they'd be married after 2 years together. Vanessa had swept into his life like a hurricane, confident, beautiful, and ambitious. As a marketing director for a luxury real estate firm, she'd approach him about a potential partnership for an upscale development. Their professional relationship had quickly blossomed into romance. The classroom door opened and Izzy emerged, her walker decorated with colorful streamers. At 8 years old, Isabella Prescott had a spirit that defied her physical limitations. Born with cerebral palsy affecting her lower limbs, she navigated the world with determined independence. "Daddy," she called, her face lighting up. "Ms. Natalie says I'm getting stronger." Damon knelt to her level. "That's my girl. Ready for your big flower girl debut. Is my dress ready? Can I try on tonight?" Izzy's excitement was contagious. "Let's ask Vanessa when we see her later," Damon said, helping Izzy navigate toward the exit. Ms. Natalie Torres, Izzy's physical therapist, stepped into the hallway. "Damon, can I speak with you for a moment?" "Sure. Izzy, wait right here, okay?" He positioned her walker near the wall. Natalie's expression was troubled. "Izzy mentioned something today that concerned me. She said she might not be in the wedding anymore." Damon's brow furrowed. "What? That's not right. She's our flower girl. She said Vanessa told her that walking down the aisle might be too difficult and embarrassing." That's the word she used, embarrassing. A knot formed in Damon's stomach. There must be some misunderstanding. "I'll talk to Vanessa. I know it's not my place," Natalie hesitated, but Izzy was really upset. "She thinks she's going to disappoint you." Damon thanked Natalie and collected Izzy, his mind racing. They drove home to the craftsman-style house he'd renovated himself when Isabella was born. The ramps and modified doorways blended seamlessly with the historic character of the home. That evening, Damon left Izzy with her regular babysitter, Melody, and met Vanessa at the Grand Pacific Hotel where the reception would be held. The venue sparkled with chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "There you are," Vanessa said, kissing him lightly. At 35, she was striking, sleek blonde hair, impeccable style, and the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding attention. The wedding planner needs to know about Izzy's entrance. Is she using her walker, or will someone carry her? Damon studied her carefully. "Actually, I wanted to ask you about that. Izzy said something about not being in the wedding anymore." Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, that. I was going to talk to you about it tonight. I've been thinking that maybe the ceremony would be too stressful for her. All those people watching, the pressure. She's excited about it, Vanessa. She's been practicing for weeks." "I know, but..." Vanessa glanced around, then lowered her voice. "This is our perfect day, Damon. The Hendersons will be there, and the mayor. Not to mention my entire firm. I've been thinking perhaps Izzy could attend as a guest. Melody could sit with her." Damon felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. "Izzy is my daughter. She's part of this marriage, too." Vanessa placed a hand on his arm. "Of course she is. Let's talk about this later, okay? The wedding planner is waiting." The walkthrough proceeded with a growing tension between them. By the time they returned to Damon's house, Izzy was already asleep. Melody left, and Damon poured himself a bourbon, waiting for Vanessa in the living room. "We need to talk about Izzy," he said when she emerged from checking her emails. Vanessa sighed, sitting across from him. "I knew you'd make this difficult." "Make what difficult? My daughter being in our wedding?" "Damon, be reasonable. She'll struggle to walk down that long aisle. People will be staring, pitying her, pitying us. Is that what you want? They'll be seeing a beautiful little girl who's part of our family. Vanessa's expression hardened. 300 guests, Damon. Business connections that took me years to cultivate. The photographer from Style, Portland. This wedding is about creating the right image. The right image? Damon repeated incredulously. Yes, and I'm sorry to be blunt, but your disabled daughter isn't coming to our wedding, Vanessa told him, her voice suddenly cold. She'll ruin the photos. Damon stared at her, stunned. You can't be serious. Obviously. Who wants that negativity in wedding pictures? She replied with an impatient wave of her hand. We can have separate family photos with her later. It's a reasonable compromise. In that moment, everything crystallized for Damon. The subtle ways Vanessa had always kept Izzy at a distance. The adult-only event she planned. How she'd never invited her own family to meet Izzy. Without a word, Damon walked to the phone. He dialed the hotel's number. What are you doing? Vanessa asked. Hello, this is Damon Prescott. I need to cancel the Prescott-Keller wedding scheduled for this Saturday. He provided his confirmation number and authorized the cancellation fee. Are you insane? Vanessa shrieked, lunging for the phone, but he turned away. Yes, please inform the staff. Thank you. He hung up and faced his fiancée. Wedding's off. You can't do this. Do you have any idea how much I've invested in this wedding? My reputation. Get out of my house, Damon said quietly. You're making a huge mistake, Vanessa sputtered. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out. You showed me exactly who you are tonight. The next morning, when the 300 guests received urgent calls informing them the wedding was canceled because the bride had demanded the groom's disabled daughter be excluded, Vanessa called Damon, screaming. How could you humiliate me like this? My phone is exploding with messages. My boss called me into his office. I simply told the truth, Damon replied before hanging up. He went to Izzy's room, where she was reading. Hey, princess, I need to tell you something important. The wedding isn't happening. Her small face crumpled. Because of me? Because I walk funny. No, sweetheart. He gathered her into his arms. Because Vanessa wasn't the right person for our family. And anyone who doesn't see how amazing you are doesn't deserve to be in our lives. 2 weeks after the canceled wedding, Damon sat in his home office reviewing blueprints for a new project. The fallout had been significant. Vanessa had threatened legal action for defamation, though her attorney quietly backed off when Damon produced texts where she explicitly mentioned wanting Izzy excluded. His business partner and childhood friend, Ray Sullivan, appeared in the doorway. You survived the week, Ray observed. Stocky with prematurely gray hair at 40, Ray handled the financial side of Prescott Construction. Barely, Damon admitted. Lost the Henderson contract. Their loss. Brunswick Developments called this morning. They want to meet. Damon raised an eyebrow. Brunswick? They're Major League. Word gets around. Apparently, Stuart Brunswick has a brother with Down syndrome. He liked how you handled things. The doorbell rang, and Ray glanced toward the front of the house. Expecting anyone? No, Damon said, rising. When he opened the front door, he found Natalie Torres on his porch. Hi, she said awkwardly. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. I wanted to check on Izzy and you. Damon invited her in. He'd always appreciated Natalie's dedication to her students. In her early 30s, she had a warmth about her that put children at ease. Izzy's at a play date. I'm surprised the school gave you our address. They didn't, she admitted, following him to the kitchen. But you're listed in the parent directory. Damon offered her coffee, which she accepted. I heard about the wedding. The school's been buzzing with it. Not my finest moment, broadcasting it to everyone, Damon admitted. I disagree, Natalie said firmly. Standing up for Izzy was exactly the right thing to do. They talked for nearly an hour. Natalie shared stories about Izzy's progress at school, and Damon found himself relaxing for the first time in weeks. As Natalie was leaving, she hesitated at the door. There's something else you should know. Last month, I overheard Vanessa talking to someone when she picked Izzy up early for a doctor's appointment. She was saying something about access to his accounts and after the wedding. It struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it until everything happened. After she left, Damon called Ray. I need you to check something for me. 3 days later, Ray arrived with a thick folder. You were right to be suspicious. I had my cousin, The one who works for the FBI Cyber Division. Take a look. Someone tried to access our company accounts multiple times in the past month. Vanessa. The attempts came from her home IP address. And there's more. Ray spread out several papers. She's been making calls to Richard Harlow. Damon frowned. The developer who tried to undercut us on the Riverfront project? The one and only. And get this, he recently hired a new consultant. Blake Tanner. Vanessa's ex, Damon said quietly. The one she said was ancient history. More digging revealed an elaborate plan. Vanessa had reconnected with Blake 6 months earlier. Together, they had plotted to gain access to Prescott Construction's client lists and project bids. The marriage would have given Vanessa legal standing to access financial information. That evening, Damon watched Izzy sleeping peacefully and made a promise to himself. Vanessa and Blake hadn't just tried to hurt him. They tried to destroy everything he'd built for his daughter's future. He wouldn't let it go. A month after the wedding cancellation, Damon attended a charity gala for the Children's Adaptive Sports Foundation. He'd become more involved since learning about their programs for kids like Izzy. Natalie had encouraged him to look into their swimming classes, which had quickly become Izzy's new passion. Across the ballroom, he spotted Vanessa with Blake Tanner. They weren't hiding their relationship anymore. Blake, with his carefully maintained physique and over-whitened smile, was chatting with Richard Harlow. The three of them looked like conspirators. Damon watched as Vanessa laughed at something Harlow said, her hand possessively on Blake's arm. When her gaze met Damon's across the room, her smile faltered momentarily before she whispered something to Blake. Quite the triangle over there, observed a voice beside him. Damon turned to find Stuart Brunswick, the real estate magnate whose company had recently contracted Prescott Construction. Stuart, good to see you. Damon shook his hand. Heard about your almost wedding. Nasty business. Stuart nodded toward Vanessa. My wife knows her. Says she's been trying to climb the social ladder for years. Jumped from Blake to you when your company started getting recognized, then back to him when Harlow offered better prospects. Sound about right, Damon agreed. Word is Harlow's planning something big. Mixed-use development on the old paper mill site. City's reviewing proposals now. Damon nodded. His company had considered bidding, but backed off when they heard larger firms were interested. You know, Stewart said thoughtfully, my company's looking for a construction partner on this. Someone with local expertise, excellent reputation. Brunswick Developments is bidding on the paper mill. Indeed we are, and we prefer partners who value family as much as business. Stewart's gaze was meaningful. My brother Tommy will be cutting the ribbon at whatever we build. He's been my good luck charm since we were kids. Later that evening, Damon found himself face to face with Vanessa at the bar. You look well, she said stiffly. You look accompanied, Damon replied, nodding toward Blake, who was deep in conversation with Harlow. Blake and I reconnected after everything. Her expression hardened. You cost me a lot, Damon. My firm demoted me because of the scandal. You cost yourself a lot, he corrected. How long had you two been planning it? Planning what? Accessing my company's accounts. Stealing our bids for Harlow. Her composure slipped momentarily. I don't know what you're talking about. The FBI does. Interesting how many federal cybercrime laws you've broken. She paled. You're bluffing. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, I'd watch your step. He smiled pleasantly and walked away. That night, Damon called Ray. We're bidding on the paper mill project. As Brunswick's partner. You sure about this? Going head-to-head with Harlow. Absolutely. And I need everything you can find on Harlow's business practices. Something tells me they're not playing by the rules. Over the next weeks, Damon immersed himself in preparation for the bid while spending more time with Izzy. He'd started taking her to weekend swim classes, where he often ran into Natalie, who volunteered there. Their friendship had grown, and Damon found himself looking forward to their conversations. Unlike Vanessa, Natalie saw Izzy's determination as inspiring rather than embarrassing. Meanwhile, Ray's investigation into Harlow development uncovered troubling patterns. They had a history of cutting corners on materials, bribing inspectors, and leaving investors holding the bag when projects failed. This guy's dirty, Ray concluded. But he's careful. Nothing sticks to him. Everyone leaves a trail, Damon mused. We just need to find it. He thought about Vanessa's words at the gala. She'd mentioned being demoted, not fired, despite the scandal. Why would her firm keep her unless she had leverage? And what would give a marketing director leverage over a real estate company? Ray, I need you to look into Vanessa's firm. Focus on property disclosures, especially for properties she marketed. A week later, Ray arrived with more files. You were right. Her company has been deliberately downplaying environmental issues in their listings. Vanessa's emails show she knew about contaminated soil, unsafe electrical systems, even asbestos, but marketed the properties as pristine. Which is fraud, Damon said thoughtfully. Felony fraud, Ray confirmed, but she kept evidence as insurance. That's why they couldn't fire her. Damon leaned back his chair, a plan forming. Insurance works both ways. 9 months after the canceled wedding, life had settled into a new rhythm for Damon and Izzy. Their modern 2-story home in Portland's West Hills offered stunning views of Mount Hood and accessibility features seamlessly incorporated into its sleek design. Damon had purchased it with the profits from the Brunswick partnership, which had successfully won the paper mill redevelopment bid. Izzy, now 9, had transitioned to forearm crutches, giving her more mobility. Her friendship with Tommy Brunswick, Stuart's 45-year-old brother with Down syndrome, had been unexpected but heartwarming. Tommy worked as Brunswick Development's Goodwill ambassador and had taken Izzy under his wing, showing her that disabilities didn't define them. Damon's relationship with Natalie had evolved from friendship to romance, slow and careful. Unlike Vanessa, Natalie had no interest in social climbing or business connections. Her commitment to her students and her quiet confidence had drawn Damon to her. On a crisp autumn evening, Damon hosted a small gathering to celebrate breaking ground on the paper mill project. Stuart Brunswick raised his glass to new beginnings and worthy partnerships. Across the city, a very different scene unfolded at the downtown offices of Harlow Development. Richard Harlow paced his corner office while Blake Tanner watched nervously. Third project we've lost to Brunswick and Prescott, Harlow fumed. The city's planning commission used to be in my pocket. Now, they won't return my calls. We need to find leverage, Blake suggested. Everyone has a weakness. What about that therapist he's dating? Or his daughter? Blake hesitated. Going after a disabled kid would be a PR nightmare. Find something, Harlow snapped, or I'll reconsider your position here. Blake found Vanessa waiting in his luxury condo, nursing a martini. Their relationship had stabilized into mutual convenience rather than passion. She'd been reinstated to her director position after providing additional insurance against her firm, but the Brunswick-Prescott success story dominated industry talks, a constant reminder of her humiliation. Harlow's on the warpath, Blake announced, loosening his tie. We need something on Prescott or Brunswick. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Actually, I might have just the thing. My assistant mentioned that Brunswick's applying for historical landmark status for the old theater on the paper mill site. If they get it, they'll receive millions in tax credits. So landmarks require extensive documentation proving historical significance. My firm handled the original designation application 20 years ago before it lapsed. I know exactly where the weak points are. 3 days later, Blake presented Harlow with Vanessa's findings. The original landmark application contained falsified historical claims, created by the former owner, not Brunswick. But if exposed, it would delay the project for months while new surveys were conducted. This is good, Harlow said, scanning the documents. But not good enough. We need Prescott himself compromised. Blake shifted uncomfortably. There's something else. Brunswick has been using Tommy as their public face, the compassionate developer. But Tommy's legal guardianship gives him profit participation. And there are specific legal requirements for contracts with cognitively disabled individuals. If Brunswick cut corners there, Harlow smiled for the first time. Now we're talking. What they didn't know was that Ray Sullivan sat in his parked car outside, reviewing the audio feed from the bug he'd planted in Harlow's office 2 weeks earlier. After confirming the recording was clear, he called Damon. They took the bait. All of it. Damon smiled as he hung up. The falsified landmark documents had been planted months ago when Damon learned Vanessa still had access to her firm's archives. The guardianship issue with Tommy was another carefully crafted fiction. That evening, Damon filled Stuart Brunswick in on the latest developments. They're desperate, Stuart noted. That makes them dangerous. And predictable, Damon countered. Harlow will try to use this information to force us to back out of the project. And when we don't, he'll go public, thinking he's exposing corruption. Instead, he'll be documenting his own corporate espionage. Stuart raised an eyebrow. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Not everything, Damon admitted. I haven't decided how to handle Vanessa. She betrayed you personally. That's different. Damon nodded, thinking of Izzy and the wedding that never was. Yes, it is. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Richard Harlow requested an urgent meeting with Damon and Stuart at Brunswick Development's offices. They accepted, knowing exactly what was coming. Harlow arrived with Blake in tow. Vanessa had wanted to attend, but Blake had convinced her to stay behind, a detail picked up by Ray's surveillance. Gentlemen, Harlow began after declining coffee, I'll be direct. There are irregularities with your paper mill project that could become problematic if made public. Stuart feigned confusion. Irregularities? Harlow slid a folder across the table. Falsified historical documentation. Improper contracts with a disabled dependent. The Planning Commission would be very interested. Damon opened the folder casually, as if seeing the documents for the first time. Interesting reading. Where did you get these? That's irrelevant, Harlow dismissed. What matters is what happens next. And what might that be? Stuart asked mildly. You withdraw from the paper mill project, citing costs, or whatever excuse you prefer. Brunswick recommends Harlow Development as the replacement. Everyone saves face. Damon closed the folder. And if we refuse, then these documents go to the Planning Commission, the Historical Society, and every news outlet in Portland. Stuart and Damon exchanged a glance before Stuart spoke. That would be unfortunate. For you. Harlow's confidence wavered. Excuse me. Damon leaned forward. These documents came from private corporate servers. Accessing them without authorization violates both federal and state laws, as does using stolen information for extortion. I don't know what you're talking about, Harlow blustered. Don't you? Damon pressed a button on his phone. Blake's voice filled the room. We need to find leverage. Everyone has a weakness. Then Harlow's. What about that therapist he's dating? Or his daughter? The color drained from both men's faces. That's illegal surveillance, Blake protested weakly. Actually, Stuart interjected. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings. And my office, which you're currently in, has posted notices about security monitoring. Standard practice. Damon stood. Here's what happens next. You leave. You withdraw any objections to our project. You never come near my family, my partner, or this development again. Or, Harlow challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. Or these recordings, plus documentation of every corner you've cut and inspector you've bribed over the past decade. Go to the FBI. Your choice. After they left, Stuart poured 2 bourbons. Well played. But something tells me we haven't seen the last of them. Probably not, Damon agreed. Vanessa won't let this go. She's too proud. What's our next move? Damon checked his watch. Right now, I'm picking Izzy up from swim class. Business can wait until tomorrow. That evening, as Damon helped Izzy with homework, Natalie called. You sound stressed, Damon observed. Someone broke into my car today. Nothing was stolen, but my files were rifled through. Damon's grip tightened on the phone. Did you call the police? Yes, but they said without theft, there's not much they can do. After hanging up, Damon called Ray. They're going after Natalie. I want surveillance on her place tonight. The next morning, Ray confirmed his suspicions. Blake Tanner was caught on camera trying her apartment door at 2 a.m. He didn't get in. Damon's expression darkened. They're escalating. Time to end this. Later that day, Damon visited Vanessa's office unannounced. Her assistant tried to stop him, but he walked past her into Vanessa's corner office. Damon, she said, recovering quickly. What an unpleasant surprise. Call off your dog, he said without preamble. I don't know what you're talking about. Blake was at Natalie's apartment last night. Stay away from her, and stay away from Izzy. Vanessa's smile was cold. Or what? Or I release everything I have on you. The fraud. The attempted corporate espionage. All of it. She laughed. You're bluffing. You've got nothing. Damon placed a USB drive on her desk. Everything's on here. I've held back because despite everything, we were almost family once. She didn't touch the drive. Why are you really here, Damon? To give you one chance to walk away. More than you gave Izzy. Your precious daughter, Vanessa sneered. You know, that's always been your weakness. You're so obsessed with protecting her that you miss what's happening right in front of you. Blake was at your girlfriend's place last night, but did you check on your construction site? Damon's blood ran cold. He grabbed his phone, calling Stuart while still staring at Vanessa. Stuart checked the site cameras. He listened for a moment, then ended the call. Nothing happened at the site. Are you sure about that? Vanessa's smirk was infuriating. Check the building department. You might find some interesting new complaints filed anonymously. After leaving Vanessa's office, Damon confirmed her claim. Anonymous complaints had indeed been filed, claiming unsafe conditions and permit violations at the paper mill site. Construction would be halted pending investigation. They're playing dirty, Ray observed when Damon returned to the office. Then it's time we do the same, Damon replied. Your disabled daughter isn't coming to our wedding, Vanessa had told Damon that fateful night. She'll ruin the photos. Now, nearly a year later, those words echoed in Damon's mind as he finalized his plan. Over the past 2 weeks, the conflict had intensified. The building department's investigation had cleared Prescott Construction, but the delays had cost valuable time and money. Meanwhile, Harlow had launched a PR campaign questioning the paper mill project's community benefits. Local news outlets carried stories raising environmental concerns that Harlow's own projects routinely ignored. More troubling were the anonymous calls to Child Protective Services claiming Izzy was being neglected. The claims were quickly dismissed, but the visits were traumatic for his daughter. They're attacking from all sides, Damon told Ray as they reviewed security footage of Blake photographing their company's delivery trucks. Time to end this. Damon's counter-move began with a call to Stuart. Remember that idea we discussed? I'm ready to move forward. The next day, local media reported that Brunswick Developments was hosting a gala to announce a major expansion of the paper mill project. The event would showcase plans for an adaptive recreation center named after Tommy Brunswick, with Izzy Prescott as the youth ambassador. They'll see this as an opportunity, Damon explained to Natalie over dinner. A chance to embarrass us publicly. Natalie frowned. You're using Izzy as bait? No, Damon said firmly. I'm teaching her that we don't hide. Brunswick has the most secure event facility in Portland. She'll be perfectly safe. And what exactly do you expect Vanessa and her friends to do? Damon hesitated, then decided Natalie deserved the truth. They've been gathering information they think is damaging. At some point, they'll make a move to use it. I'm controlling when and where that happens. On the night of the gala, Portland's business and political elite gathered at the Brunswick Tower. Izzy, resplendent in a blue dress that matched her eyes, sat beside Tommy Brunswick on the stage. Damon stayed close, watchful despite the security team's presence. Stuart's speech about inclusive development received enthusiastic applause. As he introduced Tommy and Izzy, Damon spotted Vanessa entering with Blake and Harlow. They positioned themselves near the back, Blake clutching a manila envelope. Exactly as expected. Damon nodded to Ray, who typed something on his phone. Moments later, Ray's cousin, the FBI cybercrime specialist, entered with 2 uniformed officers. They approached Harlow's group quietly. Damon focused on Izzy, who was speaking confidently into the microphone about what the recreation center would mean for kids like her. The audience was captivated. Photographers captured her bright smile. No one should have to sit out because they move differently, she said, her voice clear. My dad taught me that. From the corner of his eye, Damon saw the FBI agent speaking to Harlow. Blake's face had gone ashen. Vanessa was arguing heatedly with one of the officers. After the presentation, as guests mingled, Stuart approached Damon. Quite a spectacle back there. What exactly did those federal agents want with Harlow? Evidence of wire fraud, corporate espionage, and attempted blackmail, Damon explained. Ray's cousin has been building a case for months. Tonight, they were caught with stolen documents they planned to use to disrupt the event. Stuart whistled softly. You set them up. I gave them an opportunity to make a choice. They chose poorly. Later, as the gala wound down, Damon found Vanessa sitting alone at a table, looking shell-shocked. Blake and Harlow had been taken in for questioning. You planned this, she accused as he sat across from her. I planned for it, he corrected. There's a difference. They're saying I could face charges too. Conspiracy. Probably. You did conspire. Vanessa's perfect facade cracked. What do you want from me, Damon? Haven't you won enough? I want to know why. Not the business stuff. I understand greed. Why is he? Why try to exclude my daughter? Vanessa looked away. She complicated things. Reminded me that I'd always be second in your life. She's a child who needed acceptance. And I'm a woman who needed to be first. Vanessa snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like competing with a child for attention? For resources? Every decision revolved around Izzy's needs. That's what parenting is, Damon said quietly. Well, I never signed up to be a parent. I signed up to be a wife. Damon stood. For what it's worth, I'm not pressing additional charges about the CPS calls. That's between you and your conscience. As he walked away, Vanessa called after him. This isn't over, Damon. He turned back, his expression resolute. Yes, Vanessa, it is. Richard Harlow paced his attorney's office, his normally commanding presence diminished by 3 weeks of legal battles. The federal investigation had expanded beyond the Brunswick project to encompass a decade of questionable business practices. How bad is it? He demanded. His attorney, Lorna Whitfield, tapped her pen against a thick folder. The wire fraud charges are solid. They have you on recorded calls discussing the document theft. Blake Tanner has already cut a deal. That's spineless, Harlow muttered. You need to consider a plea agreement, Lorna advised. The alternative is potentially 15 years. Across town, Blake faced his own reckoning in Vanessa's condo. His plea deal had kept him out of prison, but banned him from the real estate industry for life. You gave them everything, Vanessa accused, pouring herself another generous glass of wine. The weeks since the gala had not been kind to her. Her firm had fired her when the scandal broke, and no one in Portland would hire her. I did what I had to do, Blake defended. Harlow was going down either way. No reason for both of us to go to prison. What about loyalty? Blake laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from you. You were planning to leverage your position with me to get a better job all along. I saw your emails. Vanessa paled. You went through my computer? Just returning the favor. By the way, your landlord called. Since you can't make rent, you have 30 days to vacate. After Blake left, Vanessa stared at her reflection in the window. How had everything collapsed so completely? She'd been Portland's marketing golden girl, destined for bigger things. Now she was unemployable, facing potential charges, and about to be homeless. Her phone rang. Her attorney. Vanessa, we have a development. Prescott's attorney reached out with a proposal. What kind of proposal? If you agree to leave Portland permanently and sign a non-disclosure agreement about all aspects of your relationship with Prescott, his daughter, and the recent events, he'll withdraw his support for charges against you personally. He's exiling me? Vanessa's voice rose in disbelief. He's offering you a way out, her attorney corrected. I strongly suggest you take it. Meanwhile, Damon faced scrutiny of his own. The methods he'd used to trap Harlow and Blake, particularly the surveillance, had raised ethical questions. Some in Portland's business community viewed his actions as excessive. Was it worth it? Natalie asked as they walked along the Willamette River one evening. Their relationship had deepened through the crisis, but she remained concerned about its impact on Damon. They went after my family, he said simply. They went after Izzy. I understand that. But the recording devices, the setup at the gala, there were other ways to handle it. Damon stopped walking. When they filed those false reports with CPS, they crossed a line. What if Izzy had been taken away, even temporarily? What would that have done to her? Natalie took his hand. I'm not saying they didn't deserve consequences. I'm asking if this version of you, the one who engineered their destruction, is who you want to be. The question lingered with Damon as he returned home. Izzy was working on a school project with Tommy Brunswick, both of them laughing as they created a diorama of the planned recreation center. Stuart observed from the kitchen, nursing a coffee. They're quite the team. They are, Damon agreed, pouring his own cup. Harlow's attorney reached out. Stewart mentioned casually. They're proposing a global settlement. Full admission of wrongdoing, financial restitution, in exchange for supporting reduced charges. What do you think? Stewart considered. I think revenge accomplished its purpose. Now it's time to build something positive from this mess. Damon nodded slowly, watching Izzy. You're right. For her sake, it's time to move forward. 6 months after the gala, the paper mill project was back on track. With Harlow sidelined by legal troubles and his assets frozen, Brunswick and Prescott faced no further obstacles. The Adaptive Recreation Center broke ground on a bright spring morning, with Izzy and Tommy turning the first shovels of dirt. Local media covered the event extensively, praising the inclusive design and community focus. Politicians who had once courted Harlow now aligned themselves with Brunswick's vision. Damon watched from the sidelines as Izzy handled interview questions with surprising poise for a 9-year-old. She'd grown more confident through the ordeal, less self-conscious about her disability. She's a natural, observed a familiar voice. Damon turned to find Ray beside him. Takes after her mother, Damon replied, thinking of his late wife with a pang of bittersweet memory. Victoria had been fearless before cancer took her when Izzy was just 2. Speaking of family, Ray said, "Have you asked Natalie yet?" Damon patted his pocket, feeling the small ring box there. Tonight, their relationship had weathered the storm of the past year and emerged stronger. Natalie had challenged Damon's darker impulses while supporting his protective instincts. She'd helped him find balance between justice and mercy. That evening, after Izzy had gone to bed, Damon and Natalie sat on the deck overlooking the city lights. When he knelt and offered the ring, her eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she said simply, "but on one condition. Name it. No guest list over 50 people, and Izzy helps plan everything." Damon laughed, remembering the elaborate wedding that never happened. Deal. Across the country, Vanessa was building a new life in Chicago. The non-disclosure agreement had come with enough money to restart elsewhere, a gesture of closure rather than kindness. She'd found work at a smaller firm, her Portland disgrace unknown in her new city. On a cold afternoon, she received an unmarked envelope containing a newspaper clipping about the recreation center groundbreaking. A post-it note simply read, "Some things are more important than perfect photos." She recognized Damon's handwriting and understood the message. Not forgiveness, but perspective. Richard Harlow wasn't faring as well. His plea agreement had kept him from a lengthy prison term, but the 5-year sentence and financial penalties had destroyed everything he'd built. His company had been sold off in pieces to cover restitution. Blake had escaped criminal charges, but not consequences. Banned from real estate, his reputation in tatters. He'd moved to Seattle to work in his brother's car dealership. The swagger was gone, replaced by a humility born of public humiliation. As for Damon, the experience had changed him in ways he was still discovering. The ruthlessness he'd shown in pursuing justice had surprised even him. It was a side of himself he now kept in check, channeling that determination into more constructive efforts. The Recreation Center project had expanded to include a small business incubator focused on entrepreneurs with disabilities. Damon had hired Tommy Brunswick to oversee community engagement, recognizing his natural talent for connecting with people. "You've created something meaningful from something ugly," Natalie told him as they reviewed wedding plans. "That's a gift." Damon thought about the journey from that terrible night when Vanessa had revealed her true feelings about Izzy. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are. The gift is believing them the first time. "Your disabled daughter isn't coming to our wedding," Vanessa had told Damon the night before their ceremony. "She'll ruin the photos." 18 months later, on a perfect summer day, Damon stood in a garden overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. Only 40 guests were present. Family, close friends, and colleagues who had stood by them through everything. Ray adjusted Damon's tie. "Nervous?" "Not even slightly," Damon replied truthfully. The string quartet began playing, and all eyes turned to the garden path. Izzy appeared first, her flower girl dress flowing around her. She walked confidently with her crutches decorated with ribbons and flowers that matched her bouquet. Behind her came Tommy Brunswick, beaming as he carried the rings. Then Natalie appeared on her father's arm, radiant in a simple lace gown. As she joined Damon under the flower-covered arch, he felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from his first engagement. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. When a minister pronounced them husband and wife, Izzy cheered loudest of all. At the reception in a nearby tent, Stuart Brunswick raised his glass to second chances and true families. As the celebration continued, Damon found a moment alone with Izzy, who was resting her legs at a table. "How are you feeling, princess?" "Happy," she said simply. "Natalie makes you smile more." "She does," Damon agreed. "Are you okay with everything changing?" Izzy considered this seriously. "You always said change isn't bad, just different. And this is a good different." The photographer approached, asking for family photos. Damon lifted Izzy into his arms, and Natalie joined them. "Should I put my crutches away for the pictures?" Izzy asked. "Absolutely not," Natalie said firmly. "They're part of who you are, and who you are is perfect." As the photographer positioned them, Damon thought about Vanessa's words that had ended their engagement. How she'd been so wrong about what made a perfect picture. Later, as guests danced under string lights, Damon received a text from Ray's cousin at the FBI. Harlow denied parole. "Thought you should know." Damon deleted the message without responding. That chapter was closed. Natalie found him watching Izzy, who was teaching Tommy a dance move despite her crutches. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about how far we've come. How much I almost lost because I couldn't see what was right in front of me." "And what do you see now?" she asked. Damon looked around at the gathering. Not society's elite or business connections, but people who genuinely cared for them. At Izzy, who moved differently but with absolute joy. At Natalie, who had shown him that strength came in many forms. "Everything that matters," he answered. That night, after the guests had departed and Izzy had fallen asleep still wearing her flower crown, Damon and Natalie sat on the hotel balcony. The photographer had sent a preview image, the three of them laughing, Izzy's crutches decorated with flowers, her face alight with happiness. "Now that," Damon said, showing Natalie the photo, "is a perfect picture. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.